whatever the case may be. But I do that, and then as time passed, I hear that my friend Mike David, he passed away, and they found him hanging inside of his shed in his backyard. I thought that was crazy when I heard that. I really didn't believe it, to be honest with you. But I heard that story, and it was just a crazy incident, you know. Sometimes I think if I'd have just stayed in the neighborhood, you know how when things happen, you think, well, if you would have did something different, would it have changed the dynamic of what happened? You know what I'm talking about? You know, like, it's kind of crazy, but it's kind of like if you would have did something different, would it have made everything else different too? You know what I mean? But that's just my thought on it. But anyways, so I hear that he passes away, and then later on down the road, I hear that Sherry Soulsby passed away. And me and her were very tight. Me and Mike were tight, but me and her was very tight. And it was just a hard hit like that. But when I heard that, I was like, man, that's crazy. But like I said, one time, you know, I felt for the kids, and then I remember that Pat lived upstairs. So my thought was that Pat started continue to take care of the kids. And I can almost put money on it that's what happened. But I don't know this to be a fact. But anyways, maybe her kids can actually hear this video and you know that their mom and dad meant a whole lot to me, and we was all real tight. And just like anybody that's friends or tight with each other, you're going to have your ups and downs and all that. You know what I mean? But in the end, we was all good. You know what I mean? And so that was just a sad chapter of my life when losing any of my friends, to be honest with you, but just them, we were really close. And it was just a bad time, really. And like I said, the story that I heard, I feel like there's more to that story. But, you know, who knows? You know what I mean? But that being said, we'll just go back. We'll jump back on Livernoise. Okay, we're going to go down Livernoise a little bit more. And at this time, we're right here on we're on the first block of Livernoise coming from the viaduct. And then there's this a house on the corner. Then there's this another house that's right next to it. Well, in this second house on Livernoise, a block from the viaduct, I'm at home. I'm living on Livernoise, a plumber. And I'm at home and I'm watching the news. And I see on the news that this couple gets tied up and gets robbed in this house that's just right down the street from my house. So I thought that was, crazy. And then later on, like, days later or whatever, or weeks later, I don't know. It was just later on sometime, me and my friends were walking past that place. And after I got past the house, I told my friends, I said, you see that house right there? And he was like, yeah. And I said, I seen that place on the news. Somebody had robbed them, tied them up and robbed them. And then, but what was crazy about it is they moved out of that house right next door to another house right on the corner. So I thought that was crazy. And I was telling my friend about it, and he was like, man, they ain't no telling, they might have robbed herself. And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, well, they might have been working for somebody, robbed herself to act like it was a robbery so they can keep the money. And I was like, man, they ain't no telling, really, to be honest with you. But I said, because I thought it was weird that they got robbed and tied up and everything like that. And then instead of like vacating the area, you know what I mean? They moved right next door to another house. I just thought that was really kind of odd. It didn't make sense to me, really. But what one of my friends said, he thinks they robbed herself and then moved right next door, is what he thinks. And who knows, only they know what really happened. But it was on the news and all that. All right, now we're going to move up Livernoise about close to the Whistle Stop Bar on Livernoise. And before you get to Whistle Stop Bar, there's a store right there. And it used to be a secondhand store for a long time. And I knew the people who had that place was Tom and Marge. And they had that place for a while. Then they changed it into a regular store. But at first they started out as a secondhand store. And I believe actually they lived behind it, to be honest with you. But anyways, they were good people and stuff like that. And but as time passed on up, one day I'm walking down Livernoise, and a Blazer pulls up, SUV, a Suburban, pulls up and gets in the turning lane. But I'm not at the corner. I'm like so many feet from the corner, I guess you could say. And they yell at me. The driver's got his window down, and he's like, you know where Spring Wells is at? And I said, no, and I kept on walking. But then as I took a few steps, then I remember where Spring Wells was at. So I said, yeah, I know where it's at. So I started pointing up toward Burner, and but Spring Wells runs across Burner. But anyways, so I'm pointing up there, then the driver sits back, and then the passenger pulls a gun up, and he shoots me in the face. And so then I rubbed my face, and be honest with you, is when he shot me, I could actually see the reason they do this in movies and stuff like that, because this is what really happened in real life. When he shot me, I could see. I don't know if my eyes just zeroed in on it or what happened, but you could see something coming at you, and then it hit me in the face, and then I wiped my face and I had blood all over my hand and stuff like that. So I shook my head, and then I was only like a block away from my house, so I ran up the street to my house, and then I had to go to the hospital, to get that took out. And when I got to the hospital, they said it lodged against my nose bone and stuff like that. But that was just, an incident I had on Livernoise, It was crazy. And then as time passed, and all these incidents I'm telling you about on Livernoise is at different times, you know what I mean? But anyways, as time passed, we moved up to right on the corner, and this is Livernoise, and it's the Whistle Stop Bar on the corner. And the guy that used to run this bar, his name was Ernie. And he was a cool guy. And anyways, at this time, my friends are hanging out at this bar. I've hung out at the bar, stuff like that. And then I'm in the bar one time and I'm with my friends, stuff like that. And then uh, some undercover police officers come in the bar and they go to the bar and then they come right to me and they ask me for ID. I showed them my ID and they said, "Hey, you're not old enough to be in here. We're going to have to write you a ticket." So, anyways, they write the bar a ticket and they write me a ticket. And then, as time passed, uh, New Year's comes up, and I go looking for my friends because I figure we're gonna do a New Year's party because I was thinking they'd be at home, and went by and they wasn't at home, so I called. The whistle stopped, and he answers the phone, and he says, "Come on up, we got a big party going on at the whistle stop." And I said, "Man, I can't come up there because I got a ticket last time I was in there." He's like, "Hang on, I'm going to talk to Ernie." And so he talks to Ernie and then gets back on the phone. He's like, "Hey, Ernie said, come on up." He said, "Because I got a full bar and I'm going to lock both doors and you can just celebrate New Year's up here." And then I said, "All right, that'll work." So that's what I did. Ended up celebrating New Year's Eve at the bar after he got a ticket and I got a ticket. And I think his ticket was 2,000 or 2,500, and then mine was only $25. But that guy just, he knew me, he liked me and stuff like that. Then he liked my friends, and so he was just gonna let me come on up and celebrate the New Year's Eve up there and bring in the New Year's. And because his bar was plumb full of people, and then he just locked both doors so nobody could come in. And that's what took place at Ernie's Whistle Stop. And this is years back, you know. But this is an incident that happened on Livernoise, you know. And then we're going to go on up Livernoise a little bit to right halfway up the block before you get to my house on Livernoise. All right, there was this dude that used to go with this girl that I knew. And he had a few words with me on military in the past. And so I'm sitting on my porch with a friend of mine, and dude walks past. And then I told him, I said, "That's that dude that that I had some words with on military, which I didn't have words when he came to me and he was, rambling off and stuff like that." So my friend, once I told him that, I didn't think he was going to act on it, but he got up and he chased the dude, and dude took off running. And, but actually he was seeing a girl that I knew right down the road. So he probably dipped in her house or jumped in her backyard or something like that. But, so then my friend came back and he said, once he cut through that field, I couldn't find him after that. So he came back. And I was like, "Man, you didn't have to do that." And he was like, "Well, I was going to teach him a lesson or whatever." And I was like, "Dude, you don't have to do that." And, but anyways, him and that girl that I knew, they ended up breaking up. down the road anyways. But she may not know about that, but once she hears this video, she might know exactly who I'm talking about. But anyways, that took place, and then one time at Livernoise and Plumber, my 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 stepdad, which he's passed away, he's no longer here anymore. I'm talking years back. My stepdad had bought this gun. I think it was a 38 or something like that, and he was showing my cousin in the living room the gun, and then my cousin, I think my cousin told him, you need to see if it'll shoot, because he had bought it. I think he bought it from a flea market or something like that where people were selling stuff on Junction. And, but anyways, he buys this gun and he shows my cousin, and my cousin said, you might ought to see if it shoots before you get into an altercation and try to shoot it and it won't even work, So then he opens the front door and he aims it up in the air, and across the street from our house on Plummer is just a giant empty field. There ain't nothing over there. There's a fence by the sidewalk, but that's it. And then some street lights. So, and he's been drinking, and stuff like that. So he aims it up there, but he's aiming it up in the air out the door. He fires it 2 or 3 times. Well, he hits the street light. I don't know if he hits the light or the pole, but at the same time, he's shooting up in the air. He ain't shooting like right across the street, you know what I mean? But it hits the street light. And at the same time, a friend of mine is walking down Livernoise on the other side of the street, and he jumps on the ground and he starts yelling. And then we all know him, you know what I mean? And then he comes across the street and he's like, hey, what are you shooting at me for? And he said, no, I was shooting up in the air. He said, well, I heard it hit the street light, so that's when I got down on the ground, And then everybody was laughing about it because he done thought somebody was shooting at him, But that wasn't the case. He was just making sure the gun was shoot after he bought it. And that guy just happened to, he wasn't in view where my stepdad actually could see him until he actually started, shooting it. And then the guy, got in view, and then he lay down on the ground, But it was crazy. But we was all laughing about it. And at that time, he had lived, this is Bobby David. And he could tell you the story about it too. And Bobby David from military in Detroit City. But anyways, that was a crazy incident. And he talked with us for a while and stuff like that. And then I asked him, I said, where you headed to? And he was like, I'm going over. I think he said he moved at this particular time. He was living in Lincoln Park, I think it was. I don't know why. I think him and his mom and dad moved over there at one time, briefly. But he could tell you more about the story, about him living in Lincoln. I think he said Lincoln Park or whatever. But anyways, that was just a crazy incident to happen right there, And also at this same house, I wanted to bring this up because on Huron Street, in a previous video that I did on my channel, I tells a story about me and my friends witnessing a guy get shot in his kitchen and killed. and stuff like that. Well, at this house on Livernoise, after the fact, the detective showed up at my house, and they wanted to get the statement from everybody in the house, and they came to me, and then they said, "Hey, you might get a subpoena to go to court," stuff like that. And that was another incident that happened at the house on Plummer in Livernoise, and and it was just a crazy time back in the day. You know what I mean? And but I hear that house is tore down now. That the house that we lived in on Plummer and Livernoise, it was like one house off from the corner, and but there was a lot of things take place at this house, and I'm going to do a segment on that uh, also, and but I'm gonna end this right here, and we'll get back into some more on Livernoise Street later. So make sure you subscribe, hit the like, the notification bell, and grow this channel, be a part of this channel. If you want to support the channel, the cash out is money sign FC313. The PayPal is DDT313. If you'd like to support the channel, go ahead and do so. We appreciate you. Stay with us. More to come. We're out.